Cool. So, hey, funnel builders, Mike here from Sell Your Service, and today I'm with Sarah Turner.
Yeah.
That's what it says on the website. And I was like, well,
that is my real name.
Yeah, yeah. I'm from the Unmumsy Mum, right?
Yeah.
And this is a kind of a bit of a different one. Usually we talk to marketers and business owners and stuff, but Sarah's got a crazy successful couple of books and a third one.
Yeah, on the way.
As well as exactly like a blog that does really well.
Yeah.
And I kind of just wanted to talk to you casually through like your process.
Yeah.
All
the
right.
Journey.
Yeah, the journey, right?
Yeah,
Which
that's
is what
fine.
everyone calls it. So for those who don't know who you are, who's Sarah Turner and who is the Unmumsy Mum?
Okay. So I'll start with the Unmumsy Mum. That's probably the easiest thing.
Great.
So the Unmumsy Mum is it is me. It is the blogging, writing version of me. And I started writing as the Unmumsy Mum in 2013. So
Quite a while ago.
Yeah,
then.
a little while ago.
Way before like the blog.
So I think that's quite crucial.
Yeah.
It was before the whole. There's been a massive mummy blogger movement, and it was kind of, there were people around at that time that started parenting blogs, but I hadn't read any of them.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like I was going solo.
Yeah, definitely.
And I had one. I've got 3 children now, but I had one at the time who was 1, and I was struggling as a parent quite a lot. And I just decided everything that I read online and saw in print was bullshit.
Yep.
So I thought I'll write something of my own, and the blog was born.
Yeah.
And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and just went for it. I thought, why not? Because I like writing.
Yeah.
So it was
what was your background before that then?
nothing to do with writing.
Right.
I've worked in finance for a bit. In fact, that's what I did before I became a mum.
Okay.
Drove around Devon and Cornwall financing agricultural machinery.
That's
Bloody loved it. Loved it. It sounds really boring, but it was great.
That's cool.
Just spent loads of time on farms.
Yeah.
But it was like a 9 to 6, 6 days a week job, and didn't fit in with parenting at all. So I quit that. Worked at Exeter Uni for a bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, blog was a hobby, and I think that's pretty key as well.
Sure.
In that it was something that it was a total passion project / therapy for me to just let it all out.
It's funny you say that, yeah. And I noticed since starting writing and writing more, that's a big part of like my like meditative process of just getting stuff out.
It's really good for you.
Yeah,
really, really good for you.
is.
And obviously I didn't have, the one thing I get asked quite a lot is, well, what was your game plan?
Yeah.
So when you started out, what was your game plan? And obviously I didn't have one.
No.
I could never have foreseen what would then unfold. But yeah, it was just a hobby.
So kind of skipping forward a bit then, like you said, you're on your 3rd book now.
Yeah.
And this is kind of how we met each other, because you're at the co-working space that I'm at. And
except for I'm a floater because I don't have a permanent desk.
You don't have a permanent desk?
I'm not quite as I'm just dipping my toe in the water. So I just go. I mean, I do choose the same desk because I'm a creature of habit, but it's not my desk.
Yeah.
I could come in and find
that's
somebody there.
I didn't know
I know.
that.
I know that's why I don't have any stuff. Like permanent fixture.
That's interesting.
You're like the next grade above, somebody with a
I got on the ground floor though.
Yeah.
So like when I was here, it was about 5 of us. It
Yeah.
was pretty much me, Gary, Susanna, and Darren.
Yeah.
And that was about it. Okay, so that's all right. Well, we'll come on to that in a bit. But you're currently writing your 3rd book.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I see on all of your social media and the content and the interviews, and you mentioned you've been on other podcasts before, is that whether you like it or not, you're now seen as an expert.
Yeah.
Right? And we kind of connected over coffee like a few months back. Do you ever feel like...
I never feel like an expert. No, I don't feel like an expert when it comes to blogging, writing, social media. Obviously, my social media has done incredibly well, and that is again, it's something people assume there was. I mean, there's some strategy, but for me, it's more about like growth and maintenance of social media. When it first exploded, it was kind of accidental, but obviously it was off the back of stuff that I'd written that went viral or whatever, and then brought the followers with it. And I was like, oh my God. And
the blog essentially has allowed you to get a couple of book deals and a 3rd book deal and speaking, and it started with the blog. Is that fair to say? It started
with the blog. It started initially, all I had was the blog. For 2 years, all I had was the blog and a Twitter account.
Yep.
because I'd been told that, you know, Twitter was where bloggers hung out.
Right.
That's where, you know, forget about Facebook or Instagram. That won't, you know, do you any favours. So I did all the things that you're supposed to do. I tried to connect with people, everybody that did a loop or a read this blog and then, you know, share this one. And I did all of that. Didn't really get anywhere. And I thought, I'm just going to just keep doing my thing, stay in my lane, do what I enjoy doing. And then a friend of mine said, have you thought about putting the blog on Facebook? Because that's where mums especially hang out at 3 a.m. when they're feeding a baby that won't sleep. Yep. And so I set up a Facebook page and sent a message around to mums that I knew saying, please follow me because it's going to be so embarrassing if this page, you know, crashes and burns.
Sure.
And within a year, I had 100,000 followers on Facebook.
Fuck.
And it's now over 600,000.
See, that's insane. See, what's insane is that I'll check out your posts on Instagram and stuff, and as well with the Positive Birth Mum.
Yeah, Siobhan,
Siobhan, beg your pardon.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh, I'll see that. And then I'll see how many of my friends followed and liked it. Yeah. I'm like, this is genuinely big. And again, you don't have financial backing, investors, certainly not at the time. And, you know, it did just start. But I think the biggest thing is, again, going back through your older content, how long you stuck at it for. Yeah. It's almost exponential. Yeah. If you started in 2013, even if you were before that big wave, it's the commitment and doing it over and over and over.
And it's doing it for the right reasons as well. So at the time, for me, it was obviously, I would be lying if I said I hadn't ever thought it would be amazing to write a book.
Of course.
And the dream was to quit my real 9-to-5 job and all the rest of it, which are all things that I now have done. When you look at it at a list, it's mad. But above all of that, I would find that I'd get the urge to write a blog post and it would be, right, I need to, and you know, I don't actually care if anybody reads it. And initially nobody was reading it.
That's so true. Yeah. And that I think is the biggest mistake I think people make, because a lot of our guys, you know, they build marketing funnels, and they're in marketing services and websites. It's a crazy crowded market. Yeah. And they're like, well, how can I get the most traction? How can I get the most traffic? I'm like, none of that is going to help you continually write. No. If you're going to commit, and a lot of the guys are like, yeah, I'm going to do it once a month. Like, if you're not doing it once a week minimum, don't worry about it. But if you're genuinely writing about things that are true to you and at the core of what you believe in, what you're doing, it's easier in the vertical.
And the other thing is, if at some point you do get more traffic than you had before, having kind of a back catalogue of material that you're really happy with is important, because all of a sudden you'll go, oh, Jesus Christ, so many people landing on my page now. They're now going back and reading what I've done. So if you're not proud to put your name to
that's a really
that
good
stuff,
point,
you know, don't churn it out for the sake of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, mine's evolved. My blog has gone. My actual blog posts have gone completely by the wayside recently because I'm writing a book and I therefore can't. It's like the content that I would have written for a blog post effectively becomes a book instead. But I kind of feel like I do mini blogs now on Instagram instead. So
and this is where the blend between what is our blog and what's kind of the point of the website.
Yeah, what is a blog?
Yeah, exactly. Compared to regularly churning out content on another platform. Yeah. Do you find it easier to use these other things? Have you kind of slowly moved into Instagram while you're writing the book?
I found, it's evolved because Instagram has naturally become more popular. It just feels like the right kind of space. And whereas 2 or 3 years ago, something I'd post on Instagram and Facebook still would have been my main page for engagement. Sure. I've still got twice as many followers on Facebook that I have on Instagram, but my Instagram posts generally have twice as much engagement.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And you know, the caption is long enough for you to. It's almost like a mini blog.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like work. You know, I can write it as I'm walking or when I'm sat on a train. Yeah. You know, there's no formatting, editing. It's just, you know, bish bash bosh.
And that's kind of bringing me back to again the starting out with your initial blog content. One of the things that stops my guys from publishing anything is it's a mixture of things, but a lot of it's they always hesitate publishing their one post because it's not quite ready yet.
Yeah, it will never be ready though.
Right, good. Yeah, so take us through this, because again, it's partly based on your philosophy of the Unmumsy Mum. It's kind of doing the best job you can is doing the job. Yeah. And I was like, that's interesting. I'll see if that transposes over to writing content.
Yeah, I think so. I think you know, if I look back, I'm proud of everything that I've written, but if I look back at some of my earliest blog posts, I will cringe, you know, like painfully. But that's okay. Yeah. They weren't very good. Yeah. And I don't know if I thought they were good. I thought I'll just try my hand at this. But they were needed as almost like a process. So if you read my first 20 blogs, I kind of feel like I evolve a style by the time I get to maybe the 20th one. And that style wouldn't have been there. That wouldn't have been the first one. It had to be a little bit shit to start with.
Absolutely.
So that fear of it being perfect, you'll just never. Yeah.
And it's the same again with writing a book, in my opinion. There's a big difference between writing and editing.
Yes.
And like I've read my second book, I'm rereading it now, and we're going through the editing process, and I'm like, what in the hell? Yeah. Like, what time was I writing this?
Yeah. I think as well, you do have a bit of a love affair with any book that you write, so you fall in and out of love with it. So it's almost like a graph. So you think this is really good, I'm really happy with this is the best thing ever, and then you hit a wall that is like massive self-doubt. You know, I've had full-blown breakdowns over I can't put my name to this is terrible. I'm going to get laughed out of, you know, the reviews are going to be awful. You know, all of that, and then you'll get like the manuscript through and read, you know, the whole thing, and then you'll think, actually, you know, it's all right, I've done a good job.
I mean, I remember seeing the first manuscript for my first one come back, and I read it and I was like, actually, I'm not that bad at this. And then, to be fair, I turned on track changes and none of it was mine. So I was like, well, that makes sense. But no, you do kind of go backwards and forwards, and I've often said, if you're going to start it, you need to get those first 20 weeks out of the way.
For anybody that's writing their first blog post and thinking, I can't press publish on this, I'm just going to, you know, dick around with it as a draft for another day, because that's a really good use of time. I've been there, I've done it. But the thing is, you become too close to that text. You know it so well, you know it too well. So you are reading it back in a way that other people won't be. You think how you consume something if you read it that you haven't written. You don't overanalyze it. It should be right, you know, you should be prudent for grammar and all that sort of stuff. But even then, if it's a good bit of writing, then
I'm constantly reminded of the GIFs and the low quality content that are published on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. I'm like, it's not the best content, but it certainly evokes an emotion.
And it's all about engagement. If somebody can relate to it, then and that's the thing. My website, it was nearly 3 years when I set it up on. I used Blogger rather than WordPress, and for 3 years it was the unmumsymum.blogspot.co.uk, and I went to a couple of blogging talks that did like the 10 things you must never do as a blogger, and I did all 10 of them. It kind of didn't matter. No. That's the other thing, you know, people can give you expert advice, but you don't always have to, toe the line.
Particularly in our field where it's like marketing and people talking about content and promotion strategy, and I think a lot of it is nonsense. And I think at its core, again, coming back to your point, if you're genuinely writing repeatedly about something you care about and you're passionate about, all of the other stuff actually isn't as important as continuing to do something that you're passionate about. I mean, that must be the thing that gets you through writing another post.
Yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to thinking, well, this will be easier to tweet out or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you have to just keep going with it. And I think it's a balance between, I definitely think if you're trying to get your blog out there, you need to have almost like a minimum standard of what you think is acceptable in terms of the frequency of content, but allow yourself some leeway with that. If you find yourself on a Sunday evening thinking, oh shit, I haven't done a blog post for a fortnight, I would say that you're better off going to do something else, coming back to it on Wednesday when you feel fresher, and write something that you're a bit happier with,
really interesting,
than churning out something that you're not happy with for the sake of it because something on Google told you that.
Well, I wonder if, because kind of going through your posts, they vary from what I would consider genuine blog content, diary-based content, and that's the second book, right? It's the diary.
Absolutely.
Over to kind of the 5 most, I think it was like the 5 most bloody useful things you can buy as a mum. So there are there's that mixed as well.
And again, that's the experimenting side of things, which actually my books tend to do a bit of both in terms of content, but I've found that you're trying to find a formula for what's successful for a blog post, but if you worry too much about that, it comes out as kind of forced. So for me, I found there's two types of posts that work really well. One is the real from the heart. It's usually when I'm in a bad mood.
Yep.
If I'm feeling in any way emotional, and it's almost the stuff that if you're having an argument with somebody, you should leave the room and not say it, but I just write it down, and it'll be a rant, or it'll be, this is how I felt today, or I wrote one that was like, I'm a terrible mother, but that was how I felt that day, and I was hesitant to post it, but I did, because I thought there's bound to be other mums out there who'll feel the same. So I post that, and that had a massive impact. But again, in terms of like numbers, sometimes the more light-hearted ones, a bit like the content you see on YouTube or whatever, would be 5 reasons why this, or 10 tips for this. Some of them would be tongue-in-cheek, some of them, and then you just experiment and you see what works.
It's interesting that those strategies, because I'm constantly being given advice myself, and I see a lot of advice from people saying, oh, you should do this on your blog, and I'm like, okay, where's yours? They're like, oh, I don't have one. I'm like,
they're still an expert though.
Oh, absolutely.
Apparently,
and that's the irony, right? And then I'm like, and people talk about SEO rankings and search optimizations, and I don't do any of that shit. Me neither. And yet I rank crazy high for stuff that a lot of my competitors wish they could.
Well, I never did anything like that on any of my blog posts. I never worried about any of that. I never had any. But then what happens is, if your blog, organically does well enough on social media, then it gets picked up by the press, and then of course you rank because it comes up in news articles and stuff.
And that's kind of, again, like, you don't think that the heartfelt, emotional human pieces are going to suit, what is traditionally seen as digital marketing strategies. And actually, I found that they work really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're searched, people read them.
Yeah.
They tend to read the whole thing rather than skimming through it.
Yeah.
I certainly find the same with, like, when we write sales letters.
Yeah.
When I write a genuine sales email from the heart, I'm like, oh, this is so, like, sappy. Yeah. Send it out and people are emailing me back, and I'm like, we're taught.
But it's because you've broken through the white noise that is what they're hearing from everybody else. It's that spark. So even when some of my first blogs were terribly formatted, the picture resolution was all over the place. I had no help. I didn't know what I was doing. I was completely amateur. I would get messages from people saying, actually, it's a breath of fresh air from the polished blogs, where the content actually is a bit vacuous. There's nothing there. It's not meaningful. And somebody said to me, I mean, yours looks really shit, but it's like meaningful shit. And that's fine.
And the funny thing is you now see the big guys, and we're talking multi-millionaire internet marketers doing this. They strip everything out now. Yeah. And I think
we were having a conversation before about one of your most successful YouTube videos, and you said it was just you talking.
It's nothing.
So it's like an unedited line, almost like the raw cut,
unshaven.
And I think that's because obviously there's it depends who your audience is and what your objectives are. But there's a time and a place for something that's a bit more just that genuine, authentic. People get fed up of the whizzy wazzy. Editing sometimes, I think.
And it kind of, I think as well, they're ultimately forms of procrastination, because all of those things, like it's
smoke and mirrors, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is very much so. And a lot of it's like, the top 10 things you should do on your blogs and whatever. And I've seen like the top 101 things you should do on your blog. Yeah. And I'm like, if you published the content, as in like hit publish and it was out there and it was shit, it still is infinitely more powerful than a perfect piece of content that you're never going to publish.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose it's difficult because as you if you have a blog and it becomes more successful, then people expect more from you. Sure. And therefore there's an element of, perhaps I should have higher standards now because more people are reading it.
But I think that, and there's like kind of a self-motivation behind that, as I've noticed certainly with YouTube content. Yeah. The more I do it, the more engagement I get, the better I get at it. And that's kind of like a positive cycle. Yeah. But if I tried to set that standard right from the beginning...
You couldn't.
I never
because you learn along the way anyway. So you can't jump in at that level because it's like a learned experience, isn't it? So you just have to push through it. I mean, albeit you're putting yourself more out there, having your learning journey on YouTube because it's filmed as opposed to, in written
funny
form.
That people see.
I feel like that's more exposing. But I don't
think it is. I think it's exactly the same.
Yeah. Maybe you're just comfortable with it. So I never got into YouTube. It was something. But
you take a lot of.
I do videos. I do Instagram stories
and Instagram. Yeah. And I'm like, that's hardcore to put that out there. Like pregnancy pictures. I'm like, I don't even. There's no way that I'd be able to do. Not that you're topless.
There's a picture of me literally just in a nappy.
Yeah.
It is like a. I mean, it's not a nappy. It's like a tenor lady post-birth nappy.
Yeah. And
it's because I got my husband to take a picture of me like an hour after our third son was born.
Yeah.
And I was like euphoric. It was like the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I laughed and I said, like made a joke, said, probably not one for Instagram. And it was only after I said that I thought, actually, why not? This is happening in, maternity units globally. And yet all we see is women polished and preened. And so I was like, no, I will. Screw it.
And that's kind of like, again, like another part of like this content thing. And I kind of want to move on to like expert status.
Yeah.
When you post those things, it exposes that actually, it turns out that every human being who's ever given birth has probably gone through the same thing. And it turns out actually it's super, super common and people kind of bond over it.
Yeah.
Again, completely against all of the stuff that you were reading and seeing.
Yes.
Movies, I think, are histen examples of like giving birth.
Oh, God,
Because I'm like, you literally could walk down a catwalk.
Also, there's just some things that are never, they just never show.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, it's nice for mums just to have a laugh, on one level, just have a laugh at ourselves.
Yep.
I don't know, and maybe it's empowering because you're kind of claiming back that, this is me and I'm not ashamed that I'm stood here in an adult nappy because I have just, delivered another human.
Yep.
But then also, I don't know, I think the whole thing about expert status, I think we've said before that it's weird because obviously at the beginning, everything I was writing was almost against the expert.
Absolutely.
In that it was actually, I find nothing online or if I go to events or anything, there's nothing that talks to me as a mum, as a woman, as a human even that I can relate to. So I'm going to write my own.
Yep.
But then gradually you're asked, well, can you be on this panel at this literary festival? Can you do an interview with The Telegraph? Can you do this? Can you do that? And you become the person that the you of however many years ago was like, there's nothing for me.
Yeah.
But I think it's fine if for me, I keep in mind, well, what was I missing?
Absolutely.
What did I want to see? And hopefully I think I am now offering an alternative. I mean, I don't consider myself to be an expert, but it's expert in the sense of, in that field.
Yeah.
Can you come talk to us about this?
And I think there's an element of, you kind of have to swallow your own self-doubt and think,
yeah, you do.
Even if I just help like 10 people.
It's the whole imposter syndrome. Which I suffer from terribly. So I will go to, I don't know, Cheltenham Literature Festival or, anything like that. And I have to have a word with myself on the way there because I start to get that real dread feeling of they've made a mistake. They've made a mistake and I'm going to get called out for it. Yeah. And they'll go, she's an author because she's written 2 books, but she's not a proper author.
Right.
I still have that now, and I'm on my 3rd book, and I'm, I've like my books are like bestsellers and all the rest of it. But there's always that element of but that's because of the social media following, and but that's just the new landscape. That's how people sell books.
But also, it's funny. I was talking because my first one was actually kind of serialized. I actually just published it for free, chapter by chapter or bit by bit, and kind of grew a bit of a following and newsletter list from that. And eventually, like I said, my publisher read my manuscript, or the self-published version. Yeah. And they were talking to me about this, and they said, well, that's kind of how like Jane Eyre, Sherlock Holmes, a lot of these were originally kind of serialized. So the social media following thing, maybe the technology's changed, but actually repeatedly getting small bits of content is kind of how it's always been done.
This is the biggest kind of confidence crisis I had was when I was about to sign my first book deal, and I'd gone through the ecstatic stage of running around my kitchen going, oh my God, I'm going to quit my job and be an author, amazing, to at any minute now they're going to find out that I'm not legitimately exactly. And I said to I'd signed with a literary agent, and I said to her, obviously I'm not I'm going to be an author but not a proper author. And she just said, actually, online nowadays it's like, rather than sending your pitch or your book proposal to agents and publishers and it landing on the desks of editors, you're just putting it out there. in the ether. It's just, it's like an online CV.
Yes.
And you may not realise that people are reading it, but you know, it's the same difference.
Yeah, it is. And I think, again, coming back to the imposter syndrome and publishing content, I know a lot of guys look towards even their first blog post. And they're like, well, who am I to write this? Yeah. And I'm like, you've got to keep bringing it back to, it's not about, the absolute worst thing that would happen is you'd have 10,000 people read your first shit blog post and disagree with you. Yeah. I'd rather have 10,000 angry people.
Because at least you've created something. At least you've, you know, stirred up a bit of a...
But it's also, again, a bit of the meditative process and writing things out, getting things on paper. Yeah. And that led to, for you, this kind of bigger movement towards being an author and seen as an expert and stuff. But like you said at the start, it wasn't necessarily your goal. No. Which is...
And actually, for me, the writing, like the writing and being an author side of things is kind of the dream. Yeah. But everything that goes with it on the having lots of followers and social media, you know, it's almost you can't have one without the other in terms of an online profile. But I don't particularly like everything that goes with having lots of followers. I still find it really weird.
It's a bit creepy.
Yeah. But because, you know, but people say, well, you know what you were doing, you know, you knew what you were letting yourself in for. Well, not really, no.
Of course, no.
Because, you know, my first blog post had I think it had 5 hits. And then on Blogger, I realised I hadn't turned off, you know, when your views count. So 4 of those 5 were me, yours, and one was like my dad or something. And that was fine. I think I try and keep in mind that same feeling then when I was writing to no one, which is hard. It's increasingly harder, but just kind of...
I think that's going to sound set. I think there's a male-female divide.
Yeah.
Because I think inherently a lot of the women that I work with are naturally more conscientious of what goes on around them. Yeah. As a guy, I'm like, I should write this because I would want to write this.
Yeah, and I think that's the right attitude. For me, I think it's the weird thing for me has been as more strangers have followed me. Naturally, more people that I know or kind of know from a previous life will follow me, and the thought of people that I know reading what I've written is a trillion times worse than, you know, a random woman in another part of the country. I just don't care.
There's separation.
I don't care what, but you know, people I've never met, you know, my books are so exposing and I literally don't care. But the fact that like my old boss will have read them is just all levels of
that's funny.
Cringe.
That's interesting. Yeah. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
This has been so... It's
the shortest commute I've ever had to an audio, to a podcast.
Well, I was like, Sarah's bloody here. I'm going to bloody get on the podcast, mate. How can people kind of reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Do you know the best place to find me probably is Instagram or Facebook at the Unmumsy Mum.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And
thank you.
Yeah, we'll do a little post when your new book is released as well.
Yay.
Sweet. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye now.